Hey, welcome to Church of the Crossroads. Kind of a unique day today, and you'll see why in just a minute. But as a church, one of our highest values, we have 4 values that we've written down that we decided we were going to kind of get after and create an environment with these values. 4 of them that we wrote down. One of those is we value keeping it real and relaxed. On Sunday mornings, that plays out in that. We're not here to perform or put on a show for you. Like, to perform or to entertain you would require me to create a persona or a character that really isn't who I am, and I can't do that. Have no desire to do that. Like, I am who I am. You get what you get with me. I'm not polished. I'm not dignified. I'm not professional, and I have no desire to be. So that's kind of who I am. We like it relaxed here. I like being who I am here as much as I hope you do as well. Another way that plays out is this. Here's what I mean by we keep it real. As a church, in this room, we're full of broken, messed up, hurting, ashamed, guilty, sinful people. That's not a secret here. Like, we don't try to hide that, and we don't try to pretend we're not. We're actually upfront with our mess. We're actually. Transparency and honesty are, and being genuine are high value to me, and we think that's a good thing, right? Like, in our culture, what we a lot of times learn as we grow up is the more we share, the more people will walk away from us, abandon us. Like, if they find out this about me, they won't love me anymore, and that leaves us feeling a little bit unlovable. And so as we get older, we just kind of close that part of us off, those dark secrets. And we try not to do that here, because we believe the more you share with us, the more we do love you. The more you share with us, the more I get to know you, the more I can love you, because now I know. Now I can lean into you and help you wherever you need help. So your dirty laundry and your dirty little secrets don't scare us, and they don't push us away. They actually stir up in us compassion and empathy. And so we love you better and even more when you're real with us. We love you. So this morning, we're going to share our dirty laundry. I'm not going to ask you to do that. If you're a guest here, I'm not going to ask you to share your sin or shame or your pain with us. That would be awkward in this setting with a bunch of strangers. Instead, this morning, we're going to share ours. The people you're going to hear from, there's 6 stories, 6 people you're going to hear from, and they're real people. They're people from this church. They're COTC family. And they're friends. And some of the stories you're going to hear, they've been really far from God. Some have nearly destroyed their own lives. And others it just took them a while to warm up to God and to trust Him. There's 2 parts to their stories. The first part, some of this is going to be difficult to hear, maybe even painful to listen to. And some of these stories, I want you to listen to them, because some of these stories might just be your story. You might be wrestling or struggling through the things that they're struggling with. And in the end, we hope, our desire is that you find hope through their stories. But I want you to hear the first part of their story first. So here's our dirty laundry.
Hello, my name is Evelyn Durbin. I'm here to tell you about my life before Jesus. My life growing up was rocky, I would say. My mom was an alcoholic and a drug addict. I dropped out in 11th grade. So we started drinking and partying really early. I got pregnant at the age of 19. The guy that I was seeing kicked me out, told me that it wasn't his child. I had nowhere to go. So I leaned on a friend, and that friend had a sister that was willing to adopt from me. I was so close to changing my mind, but I wanted my son to have everything that I didn't have, and I couldn't offer him. When I got a divorce from my first husband, I went straight into another relationship, but he also liked to drink. So it's kind of like it was a vicious cycle. I just could not get out of it. He was on drugs real bad. He was on meth. He didn't live but a couple months after that. That led me to total destruction.
My name is Karla Wilbanks. I've been attending COTC now for a little over a year. So I met my first husband. We were in high school together. He was a year behind me. I was 16, he was 14 when we first met. So we dated pretty much through high school. He joined the Navy. He got home from the Navy. We were married, we had a kid. Everything was kind of threw at us all at once. Didn't really go to church or anything, but we had our ups and downs like most marriages do. He was out with some friends, and I remember getting the call that he was out on his motorcycle, and I guess it fishtailed, and they were going to take him to U of L, and I'd asked his friend, I was like, is he okay? And his head was fine, his spine was fine, he was going to live, but they wasn't able to save his leg. He actually died twice on the table while they were trying to reattach the leg, and then they had 5 surgeries after that just to kind of keep the other one, because the only thing holding it on was skin. That was a big struggle because he was in the hospital 5 weeks then, and I slept on a little cot next to him, and my mom and his mom and everybody was kind of taking care of our kid. And he worked at Ford on the line, and he was back to work in 10 months. And then that's when I guess kind of thought, all right, we made it through this. But he started having some confusion, and I thought it was just like a closed brain head injury from the motorcycle wreck kind of just showing up. But then that's when we found out that it was brain cancer. That was tough. I don't know that he knew that he got to the end of his battle. It kind of snuck up on him. He used to say that he would just go away and not come back so he wouldn't put us through that.
Good morning, church. If you don't know me, my name is Don Dimmit, and my wife Donna and I have been regulars here at COTC from the very beginning. When John asked me to do this, he asked me if I was willing to share my dirty laundry. I got a little bit of a chuckle out of that because for 42 years I ran a large industrial laundry, and if anybody has dirty laundry experience, that would be me. From the time I can remember being a toddler till my mid-20s, I was in church all the time. My parents were very strict. We went to church every time the doors were open, and that was very frequently. I was baptized at an early age, maybe age 11, although I really don't have much recollection of it. After that, I learned to pray in front of the congregation. I served communion. I drove the church bus. I even served as youth director for a while. But then a divorce, a career that I let dominate my life, and life in general got in the way. And for about 40 years, I just found myself kind of wandering around. I married Donna in 1991, and we had a blended family of 3 small children, and Donna tried to get me going back to church, and I did for a while. We attended regularly. Donna and the girls were baptized, but I failed to really support her in those early years, and so we went from regular attendance to occasional attendance to no attendance. I think that is one of my greatest regrets in life. And I've prayed about that, and I know God's forgiven me. But we now belong to a church that I see so many young, vibrant, energetic families coming. And they're raising their children in the right way. The men are being the spiritual leaders of their family. They're serving, they're leading ministries. And it's just made me recognize how horrible I failed in that area.
My name's Alison Egan. I grew up going to church occasionally, but never really went all the time. My mom grew up Baptist, my dad was Catholic, so when we went to church, we went to a Methodist church, but like I said, it was just occasionally. They did instill in us a really strong moral background, but I kind of always just felt like something was missing as far as not belonging to a church. And my husband and I, when we got married, we tried several different churches, and I never really felt at home. One week in particular, in I think it was late June, I had just lost a coworker who had retired the previous year, and she found out that she had a brain tumor, and it had been less than a year since she retired. And I was just devastated, but it was beautiful how she was at peace at the end of her life. She was just happy that she was going to be going home to Jesus. And after she died, I prayed to her, and I asked, can you show me the way to that peace? And the very next Sunday, I sat in church, and the sermon was about the steps to becoming a Christian. And I knew then what I needed to do. And you would think that I would have gone right up yelling, confess right then and there. But it took a while. I don't know if it was, I was scared. I guess I was embarrassed that I was so old. I was 41 and had never been baptized. But I knew at that point that that's what I needed to do. The weeks kept going by, and I just thought, well, maybe this will be the week. And I was just, I didn't do it that week, and they kept going by. And on August 1st, I was in the hospital along with my family, and I was there by my aunt's side when she took her last breath. And I felt good knowing that she was in a better place, but there's something about death that makes you just really think about what's going to happen to me when I die.
My name is Troy Greenwell. Well, where do we start? Graduated from Southern High School and left and joined the United States Marine Corps. Started off really well. 2 years into that, I met a woman and got married. A little while after that, we had a child, a daughter named Gabrielle. Had made plans on how I was going to spend the rest of my life, what I was going to do. And then one day I came home from work and found a note. I found out that my wife wasn't being faithful, and that ended a marriage at the age of 21, which I wasn't real happy about. Worked, went out every night, drank every night. Drinking didn't cut it after a little while, so I started partaking in drugs. Became a club goer, so every Friday, Saturday night, I was at the club, doing drugs, ecstasy, cocaine, you name it, acid, all the stuff that you see on TV. Started with one wouldn't do it, so became 2, 3, 5, 6, and sometimes even 7 pills a night. Stayed up all weekend, go back to work on Sunday evening. I was driving over the road, which also a lot of time to myself in a truck, a lot of time to think about failed relationship, what it's like being a parent 2,300 miles away from your daughter. And over the, I guess, 3-year span, things just rattled out of control, and found myself laying in the bed one night and friends walked in the room and asked if I was okay. I wasn't.
I'm really scared right now, I'm not gonna lie.
It's okay. That's all right, man. It's just us.
It's not abnormal. Everybody gets very nervous to do this.
Hey, I'm Robbie. I'm 29 years old and I've been a member at COTC since last spring. And this is my testimony. I grew up in an alcoholic home with a stepfather who drank and used drugs, and there wasn't a God presence as you were in the house. It was more my mom's side of the family trying to bring Christ into my life and show me what a Christian life is. There was a lot of verbal and physical abuse, and I didn't know who my dad was. He was non-existent. And you know, at a young age, I thought, you know, something's wrong with me. I'm defective. What's wrong with me? Nobody loves me. What did I do wrong? Why doesn't my dad want nothing to do with me? So I started seeking approval from other people. My family kept taking me to church, and I kept trying to believe in a God of their understanding that they had a personal relationship with, not me. I didn't know how to develop that relationship. Alcohol and drugs became my master, and I became obsessed with it because that relief that I got made me feel normal. And when I wasn't drinking or doing drugs, I was suicidal. I was beaten up inside. I didn't feel wanted, and I didn't share that with anybody because out in the world, they tell you not to. Before you knew it, I was doing hard drugs, and I was full-blown meth addict for 3 years. I ended up losing everything except my job because of it, and I was miserable. I was still suicidal. I hated my life. I hated everything that was going on. My life crumbled completely. My mental stability crumbled, and at that point, I didn't know how to do anything. All I knew how to do was to get high, go to work, and maybe sleep if I could, and do other drugs so I could force myself to sleep. There was no helping me. I was gone, and there was no life there for me. I was just a shell of a person. I thought, you know, this has got to end, and when I get home, I've got to end it.
I don't know how this makes you feel. I wonder what's stirring up inside of you right now, and I want to maybe process that with you just for a minute, because for me, I'm feeling a little bit of everything. You know what I mean? Like these are my friends, and the sadness and I hate what they had to go through. I think another part of me is feeling what I'm feeling because in some ways their story is my story, right? Like seasons of darkness, things I've done in the past that I still carry some of that shame, brokenness, messiness, There was a time in my life where I was completely miserable and didn't want to go on. I was confused and didn't know where I was going. So for me, it stirs up all kinds of things inside of me. And in fact, there was a point in time in my life where I didn't know if I could ever really love anybody, and I certainly didn't think that anybody could ever really love me. I didn't even know what love was. Until I met Jesus, and you're going to hear more about that in these stories, because Jesus is the turning point. Jesus is the change, right? In my own life, Jesus was the moment when everything began to change, when things began to turn around, and that's what Jesus does. Like, Jesus takes your story, as messy and ugly or broken as it may be, and he begins to write a new chapter. He begins to write the end of your life, and the end of your life then with him is a different story. It's a redeemed story. It's a story that's full of grace and hope and healing and love and recovery, and it's a life of freedom. But it's only through him. Like, life with Christ has a different ending. And here's the ending to these stories.
I was lost, really lost. I met my husband now. We went through a lot of stuff too, but the last straw was when I had lung cancer, when I was diagnosed with lung cancer, and that's when I broke down and got on my knees and prayed to God that I didn't want to die. You know, through that, my faith got stronger, which I know a lot of people lose their faith, but that's all I had. They got rid of all the cancer, so I was very thankful for that, and I told my husband that I was ready to get involved with the Lord more. And I met a lot of good people that didn't judge me, people that are still my friends today. 2 years ago, I got to actually meet my son for the first time. And he's been in my life ever since. I always tell him I'm never going to let him go again. God saved me, and he opened my eyes and made me realize that whatever happened in my younger days was not my fault. You know, with my mom being an alcoholic and a drug addict, growing up like that, I always thought it was my fault. Jesus loves you. It won't happen overnight. You can take baby steps. There's always somebody to love you.
God put a lot of people in my path to get me through everything. After Eric passed, I wasn't on the right road again. Like, you go through darkness, but I guess kind of in the darkness I met Daniel, and like I said, our boys were best friends, and so that's kind of how we met. So when we started dating and before we got married, we were at one of the sermons, and Parkey said, I feel like somebody needs to really come down, but I feel like that they're kind of stuck. And he said, so we're going to do one more song. And so he kind of grabbed my hand and said, come on. And so he went down front and did his confession and got baptized that day, and we got married in '08. We're still like just now in a small group, and it's been a long, slow journey, but we're still on the journey and learning. And life with our small group, it's been really good for us. We were really nervous at first to join, but everybody's been like super nice, and everybody shares their stories, and it's just been a real blessing. I don't know if you know it at that particular time, but when you look back at everything that you survived, you know that you didn't do it by yourself. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you turn it over to God, He has a plan, a purpose. You may not always feel it, you may not always know it's there, but it is. And when you look back, you realize that you made it through, you're a survivor, and you did it all through Him.
My life started changing in February of 2016, although I didn't know it at the time. My daughter and son-in-law, Christine and Jake Schwindel, attend COTC. Shortly after that, they told us that they were attending Oklahoma Christian Church. They wanted to raise their children in a Christian home, a church environment, and they wished we would attend with them. It just kind of touched my heart, got my attention. And I think it was about this time that I started feeling closer to God, and I thought, how ironic that one of my children that I should have been leading is now leading me to God. But I still didn't have a clue of what was about to happen over the next year. So during these 40 years that I was kind of wandering around in my own little desert, I did a great job of convincing myself that I was in great shape. I still believed in God. I prayed occasionally, usually selfish prayers, but I did pray. I went to church occasionally, and I just felt like I was a really good guy, and that was probably enough. I now know that that's not enough, but God was being patient with me, and He was leading me. For me, I've gone since 2016 when Austin was born to where God wasn't in my life and I didn't feel that I needed Him in my life, to where now God dominates our life. Donna and I talk about the Bible, we study, we pray. I think I spend more time with the grandkids. Just in general, I was just lost. And I feel like today, for the first time in my life, that I'm going to spend eternity in heaven, not only with God, but with a lot of wonderful people from our church that I've met. And that's reassuring to go to bed every night feeling like that.
That's when I really started thinking, what is it in this life do I want? What am I missing? Who are the people that I see every day that are happy? What do they have that I don't? My grandparents had been married for 52 years, and never had an argument, and I wanted that. My dad had just been baptized, and him and Agnes were going to church pretty regularly. I could see that he was changed. There was a lot more smiling going on in his life, and that's where I wanted to be. So one Saturday evening, I didn't go out, and I asked if I could tag along to their church Sunday morning. And that's what I did. I went 2 or 3 times, and I remember one Sunday morning, they had a guest speaker at the church, and I couldn't even tell you what the message is right now, but I know that whatever it was that he said, at the end of the service when he stood up and said, if anybody has that in their heart right now to come forward. I felt like I couldn't walk, but at the same time, I was already making my way to the front of the church. That day, I gave my life to Christ. A couple weeks later, went to Promise Keepers with 60,000 men, and it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. 60,000 men with their hands in the air, praising, worshiping together. It was incredible. I made some of the closest friends that I couldn't even possibly think of. In and out of church every Sunday, I've seen this beautiful woman that finally got the nerve up to go talk to. And a few more months, we'll be married 12 years. And I can honestly say it's, the greatest 12 years of my life. We pray together. We talk about the Lord. We go to church. We know each other. We care about each other. We love each other. And it's a love that I could say I didn't have in the first marriage because I didn't really know what love was. The simple fact that now that I know that Jesus came to this earth, walked this earth for my sin and died for me, that painted a picture of what love was. And going into a marriage with that picture of love, it's so much easier to love.
In the midst of that heavy addiction, I used to try to disprove God and say that he wasn't real, and I was agnostic for the longest time because, like I said, what God does this to somebody. And I tried to find every reason that God wasn't real. And then in this moment, I thought, what else do I have left? Why not just plea out to this God I don't believe in? I said, God, if there is a God, I don't know what to do. I'm sorry for not believing in you if you're real. I'm really sorry. I don't know what to do with my life anymore. Please help me, please. I can't do this anymore. I'm miserable and everything's gone. I knew I needed to go to church because of that fundamental idea that was instilled in me from my family when I was young that I didn't really want to look into. And I gave into it at that point, and I looked online and I seen this church. I seen a bunch online in Mount Washington, but there's one that was called Church of the Crossroads. And at that point, I was literally thinking, I'm at a crossroads in my life. This is a really good idea. Maybe this will work out. And so I came, and I know that a lot of things don't feel like home for me sometimes. But I walked in and it was like the happiest people I'd ever met. And it almost freaked me out, but it was comforting at the same time. On Father's Day of last year, with my history with my fathers and stuff, on Father's Day, we agreed that that's the best day to get baptized. So that's the day that I handed myself over to Christ, and that's when everything really changed.
On Friday, I was at my daughter's game, and I got a call from one of my former U of L teammates that I lost a friend in a tragic car accident. She was going to a volleyball game with her 12-year-old daughter and another mother and her daughter. And since Friday, I've really been struggling just why this could happen, how this could happen, struggling just seeing that as my family, and that's me and my daughter on our way to a meet or a game. Struggling to think of how her husband and their 3 kids who are still living are going to bounce back from this. My sister-in-law sent me a verse from Psalms that says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." I can only imagine that faith and family and friends will be what gets them through this devastating time. Faith knowing that she was a woman that was strong in her faith, and although they will grieve, they will not question that she is in a better place. After I found out this devastating news, I thought about our video testimony that we had actually recorded a couple days before, and I thought of all the things I wished I would have said. I wish I would have said this, but I wasn't going to call and say, "Can I come back in and give another testimony?" And then, as the Lord would have it, I got a text on Sunday that the last part of the video clip, the sound was not right. So they asked me if I could come back in to finish that end part. And I just know that the Lord works in mysterious ways. And what I didn't say is that when I chose to be baptized, it wasn't just for me. It was also for my family. Because I want them, God forbid, some kind of tragedy like what happened to Leslie and the Preethers happens to me and my life is taken. I want them to take comfort knowing that I'm in a better place. So yes, I did it for me, but I also did it for my family. And I know there are those of you sitting here today who are thinking about, you're on the fence of, is today the right day? You've been thinking about it and it's been weighing heavy on your heart. And, you may have answered all the whys. Why should you? There might not be a tomorrow. So maybe just ask yourself, why not?
That's the question this morning is if you're lost, confused, feeling broken, messed up, feeling distant, why not move toward hope? Because there is freedom. Your story could end differently than the way it's being written now. But that hope's only found through Jesus Christ, and you are not too far gone, too messed up, too broken, too sinful for Jesus. In fact, just the opposite. He sees your pain and brokenness and shame, and that draws him to you. He sees you, he empathizes, he has compassion, and he shows up because of it, and he dies because of it. He carries your sin and the burden of that weight on himself so that you don't have to. He dies so that you might live. And so this morning is a call to life. This morning is a call to have your story, the trajectory of your life changed, the end of your story written differently, the end of your story being written with full of grace and peace and hope and power and life. And so this morning, if you are feeling too far gone, broken, and in shame, what are you going to do about it? Because there is something you can do, and that's surrender to Jesus. He's inviting you to. He wants you to. It's the best decision you ever make.